Have you ever made a stupid purchasing decision? Like you just bought something and afterwards you're thinking, what did I do? And yeah, I might be thinking about the Snuggies. Do you remember those? These giant blankets that you wear? We made sure we got some, and then they sat in the storage for several years before we finally got rid of them. What are some of those stupid purchasing decisions you've made? Those things that after you did it, you had that buyer's remorse because you realized you didn't use them. You know, we've been on this journey in my family. We've been doing minimalism. Have you heard of it? Where you go through all of your stuff, room by room, and you clear out all the stuff that you don't use anymore. It doesn't bring you joy. You're not even sure why you have it. And I have to tell you, it's disgusting. It's just disgusting as you are looking through all of your things and you're like, I spent money on that. I spent good money on it. And I never used it. It's not even that, once it brought me joy, once it was good, once it was helpful. It was, why did I buy that? Why did I think that was the thing that was going to make my life so much better? We're in this series right now looking at what if. What if your life was different? What if your finances didn't control you? And specifically today, what if your finances didn't control your emotions? What if you weren't driven so much by money? Because how do you feel, really, when you think about your personal finances? Do you feel really secure? I don't think most people do. Actually, what I usually hear people say is, it's not enough. Or they go even further, it's not as much as they have. They feel personally inadequate. Did you know this past Black Friday, you know they let you buy things. They have a program called Buy Now, Pay Later. Lots of different companies do this. Did you know the number of people who decided to go buy now, pay later rose by 78% this last Black Friday compared to the previous year? An additional 78% of people, that's a lot, they decided we're going to burden our future by buying stuff that we can't afford today. And some of you are thinking right now, that was me. And you're thinking right now, if I didn't do that, I couldn't have bought the things that I did. I couldn't have afforded it. The things that I chose to do, I couldn't have made those choices. But they weren't choices that helped you in the long run. Let you buy something now that you couldn't afford, and now you're stressed about how you're going to pay those bills. Why do we spend so much? Why do we spend money we don't have? Some of us, we spend to cope. We spend as a way of coping with other worries and anxieties in life. Some of us, I've been talking to you, you tell me you feel pressure to spend. Pressure from other people saying, no, you have to buy these kinds of things to keep up. And this thought of looking around everyone else's nice car, everyone else's nice thing. And you look on Instagram, you look on Facebook, you're looking on YouTube, and you see all the things that other people have, and you think, why don't I have that? And you think you're going to get more worth. And most of us, we're not rational with it. It's just the way that we process the world. The irony is, when we spend like that, we still feel inadequate. We show people our purchases, and it's almost like a 3-year-old showing their parents their art project and saying, here it is. Look what I got. Am I good enough? Am I okay? And people do this. Whether they hold it up to the person and say, let me show you, or they put it online and they say, hey, did you notice the new truck? Because we still feel inadequate. Because it actually didn't fill the hole. And then we feel more stressed out trying to make payments for bills that we can't afford, and we get more and more behind. And it's funny, as we're feeling inadequate, we end up judging other people. We end up judging other people for spending too much or not having the things that we think are important. And we have to think they're important because we made those purchases. Over time, we start feeling out of control. But I'm going to tell you, underneath all of that, there's something deeper happening. There's something under the surface. Jesus tells us about it in Matthew chapter 6. Let me just share these words with you. Jesus says to people, he's using an image they understand. He says, the eye is the lamp of the body. In other words, the light comes into us through our eyes. Therefore, if the eye is healthy, he says, your whole body is full of light. And this was the way people thought about it in the first century, is through your eye, all the goodness of the world comes into you, right? You see that. That makes some sense. All the goodness that can be had and seen, it comes in through your eye. And if your eyes are healthy, you see clearly. When it comes to finances, a lot of us don't see clearly. Like, can we just admit that to ourselves? If you're stressed, if you're overwhelmed with even thinking about money right now, makes you feel a little anxious. When you think about the bills coming, you're feeling stressed. We're not seeing clearly. If the eye is healthy, your body is full of light. If you're feeling anxious and stressed, the eye is not healthy. And then Jesus says, but if your eye is bad, in other words, if your eyes are squinty, that's another way this is translated, then your whole body is full of darkness. This was a metaphor used in the first century. We understand it today as well. They said if someone's feeling greedy, they're wanting more and more and more, and it's never enough. Never enough. Then they're feeling squinty-eyed. They're looking for more. And if your eye's bad, Jesus says the whole body is full of darkness. And if then the light in you is darkness, how terrible that darkness will be. There have been places in my life where I've gotten greedy, right? Probably for you too. There's been things that I got jealous of. What do others have in terms of possessions and accomplishments? That squinty-eyed behavior, I'm guessing you've experienced that too. And all it leads to is feeling like I'm not enough. You're not enough. And it doesn't give life. Jesus goes on and he says, no one can serve two masters. Oh, these are fighting words here. These are tough words. He says, no one can serve two masters. And when people first heard this, they're like, what are you talking about, Jesus? He says, either you're going to hate the one master and love the other master, or you're going to be loyal to one and have contempt for the other. And people are thinking to themselves, what are these two masters? Here are they, God and wealth. God and wealth. The Greek word for wealth, it's mammon. And mammon, wealth, people thought that's a good thing. In that first century culture, just like today, the more the better. That's the way people thought. This is human fallen nature. The more the better. If I can just collect more stuff, that means I'm prosperous, I'm doing well. The more the better. And what Jesus says is if you're driven by this God of more, this false God of more, that promises that if you just get one more thing, you get a little more, you'll be okay, then you're not going to be worshiping, you're not going to be serving the true God. You have to pick which God you're going to serve, which God you're going to worship, which God you're going to honor. You can't serve both. Because here's the thing that happens. As human beings, yes, there's some autonomy we have, but also, just in the way we're wired, we're created as beings of worship. People who worship, beings who put our allegiance towards someone else. And if we're putting our allegiance to God, then everything else comes after that. But if we're putting our allegiance to the God of more and more and more, what Jesus says is we can't worship God at the same time. It just doesn't work. Here's why. Because we belong to God or we belong to our stuff. We get to choose. You choose, I choose, we choose for ourselves. But who do you belong to? Do you belong to God or do you belong to stuff? Does your stuff own you? You know, as we went on this journey of minimalism with our family, we started, this is a year ago, we've been clearing out room by room by room. As we started looking through it, we discovered all of this stuff that we'd spent good money on. And that hurt. But also, all of the time that we remembered spending, wasting, sifting through this stuff to find the thing we're actually looking for, and realizing we're owned by our stuff. This stuff is draining our time. It's draining our energy. It's amazing as we took the time to get rid of stuff, to get rid of this other God, so to speak. It is amazing the way we found we had more time, more joy, more happiness. Because it really comes down to who owns you. Does your stuff own you or does your God own you? Who do you worship? Who do you serve? What if money didn't control you anymore because everything that you have belongs to God? What if you belong to God and you know you're okay because God says you're okay? Because God says you have worth. Because God says you belong. And you don't need to buy stuff so you can hold it up to other people to say, am I okay? Am I good enough? You know you're okay. Because God says so. And God looks at you and says, I love you. You're my child. What if everything you have then belongs to God? And instead of looking to God, say, look, I got this fancy new toy. Am I good enough for you now? Instead, you could say, God, here's what you've blessed me with. How can I use this to make an impact in this world? Because I'm not going to run after shiny things. I'm going to ask you right now, would you pray with me that this could happen in your life? Would you pray right now, God, help us, even help me, to be a person who serves you rather than my stuff, who values you more than the stuff that we acquire. Help me to be a person who doesn't get distracted by shiny things. Help me to know I belong to you, that you are my God, that you are the one I serve. Open our eyes to see clearly the ways that our attraction to stuff is actually increasing our stress, increasing our anxiety. When our eyes are bad, the whole body is full of darkness. And how terrible that darkness has been. But you, God, you want to give freedom. So we ask that you set people free. We put our trust in Jesus to be the one who makes us right, who makes us okay. And we choose to live a life in which everything we have and do belongs to you. Amen.
Hey, this is Ashley from Grace Ottumwa. I'm praying you had a meaningful encounter with Jesus during this message. If this message impacted you in a positive way, we'd love to hear about it in our Facebook group, Grace Ottumwa Church Online. You can support Grace by subscribing to Grace Ottumwa's YouTube channel. If you'd like to support Grace Ottumwa's mission, you can give online at graceottumwa.org/give.